My name is Sofia Alvarez, and the first movie I ever directed was filmed in a laundromat at 2 in the morning. The actors were my cousins. The lighting came from broken fluorescent bulbs. And the camera was an old phone that overheated every 15 minutes. But to me, it felt like Hollywood. I grew up in a narrow apartment above a laundromat in San Antonio, Texas. The place always smelled like detergent and hot metal. At night, when the machines downstairs spun their final cycles, the entire floor vibrated like a distant train passing under the building. My mother worked there 6 days a week. Sometimes 7. My father left when I was 9 years old. One day he was at the dinner table complaining about bills and the noise of the washing machines downstairs. The next morning he was gone, no note, no explanation. Just an empty chair and my mother staring quietly at the kitchen wall for a very long time. After that, life became something simple. Work, school, survival. Dreams didn't really belong in our apartment, but movies did. When I was 12, my mother dragged home a small television someone had thrown away behind a thrift store. The screen flickered. The sound buzzed, but when it worked, it showed worlds far bigger than the one I lived in. I watched everything. Old westerns, foreign films with subtitles I barely understood, black and white dramas where characters spoke slowly and stared out windows like they carried secrets. But the moment that changed my life happened one rainy night when I was 14. A small independent film was playing on public television. It wasn't flashy. The actors weren't famous. But the story felt real in a way I had never seen before. When the film ended, the credits rolled slowly across the screen. And that's when I saw it, directed by Sofia Alvarez. I sat up immediately, not because the movie was perfect, but because the name was mine. Someone with my name had made that film. And suddenly the impossible felt slightly closer. That night I told my mother something I had never said out loud before. I want to make movies. She was folding laundry when I said it. She didn't laugh. She didn't tell me it was unrealistic. She simply looked at me and said something that stayed with me for years. Then you better learn how. The next week, I borrowed her phone and started filming. My first studio was the laundromat after closing hours. The metal machines became props. The spinning dryers created strange shadows across the walls. My cousins acted in the scenes. The story was about a girl who wanted to leave her neighborhood and become someone important. At the time, it felt like fiction, but deep down, I knew it was something else. It was hope. Editing that first film took weeks. The old laptop I used kept freezing. Sometimes I lost entire scenes and had to start again. But when the final version was finished, I uploaded it online with a title that probably sounded ridiculous to everyone except me. First film by future Oscar winner. The video got 27 views. Most of them were my friends, but one comment appeared under the video a few days later. It was written by someone named Film Teacher NYC. The comment said, "You see the world like a filmmaker. Don't stop." That sentence became the quiet engine behind my life. Because the truth is, the world does not make filmmaking easy for girls like me. By the time I finished high school, reality began pushing hard against my dreams. College was expensive, film school even more, and every adult I spoke to gave me the same advice. Choose something practical, get a stable job, movies are for rich people. But I had already seen something they hadn't. Stories belong to everyone. And I had too many stories inside my head to ignore. So instead of giving up, I made a decision. If Hollywood wouldn't come to me, I would start building it myself. My mornings were spent working at the laundromat with my mother. My afternoons were spent taking free online film classes. And every night after the last washing machine stopped spinning, I filmed something new. Short scenes, small stories, little pieces of the world around me. I didn't know it yet, but those small, imperfect films were quietly shaping the director I would become. Because filmmaking isn't just about cameras. It's about noticing things other people ignore. The way silence fills a room. The way someone's eyes change when they lie. The way dreams refuse to disappear, even when reality tries to crush them. And somewhere in the middle of those long nights inside a laundromat, the poor girl with a broken phone began creating something much bigger than she realized. Her first real movie, and one day the entire world would watch it. The first thing people never tell you about chasing a dream is how lonely it becomes. Not in the beginning. At the start, dreams feel exciting. Everyone smiles politely when you talk about them. They nod their heads and say things like, "That's wonderful." But after a few years, the smiles start to change, because dreams that refuse to disappear make people uncomfortable. By the time I turned 22, the laundromat had become more than my workplace. It had become my film studio, my classroom, and sometimes my only quiet place in the world. My mother still worked there every day, folding clothes beneath buzzing lights while the machines hummed like distant engines. I worked beside her most mornings, but at night the laundromat became something else entirely. My movie set. I filmed stories about the people I knew. The single mother who worked 2 jobs, the old man who washed the same jacket every week because it belonged to his late wife, the teenager who dreamed of leaving the neighborhood but didn't know how. None of the films were long. Most of them were barely 10 minutes, but they were honest. And honesty is something cameras understand better than perfection. Over the next 4 years, I made 12 short films. 12, each one better than the last. Each one rejected by every film festival I sent them to. The emails always looked the same. "Thank you for your submission. Unfortunately, we cannot include your film this year." At first, I printed those emails and pinned them above my desk like reminders to improve. But after the 20th rejection, they started to feel heavier. Like proof of something everyone else already believed, that I didn't belong in that world. One evening, I was sitting on the roof of our apartment building, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, when my friend Marcus Reed climbed up beside me. Marcus had been in almost every short film I made, mostly because he was the only person patient enough to repeat scenes 20 times without complaining. "You're thinking about quitting," he said. I didn't answer. He leaned back against the brick wall. "You know, I can tell. I've been doing this for years," I said quietly. "And nothing's happening," Marcus shrugged. "Something is happening." "Where in your head?" he said. "That's where every director starts." I laughed softly. "That's not exactly helpful." Marcus stared out over the city. "You ever notice something strange about movies?" "What?" "People love watching underdogs win." "Yeah, but nobody wants to live the part where the underdog is losing." His words stayed with me long after he left. Because the truth was, I was losing. Financially, emotionally, practically. I was 24 years old with no savings, no connections, and a dream that looked more unrealistic every year. 2 months later, something happened that nearly ended everything. The laundromat closed. The owner sold the building to a development company that planned to turn the entire block into luxury apartments. My mother lost her job overnight. And suddenly survival mattered more than filmmaking. For the first time in years, I packed away my camera. Weeks passed, then months. I worked at a grocery store stocking shelves during night shifts while my mother found work cleaning offices downtown. The dream that once filled every moment of my life became something quiet and distant. Until one evening, Marcus showed up at my door holding a flyer. "You need to see this," he said. It was an announcement for the South Texas Independent Film Festival. A small event, nothing like the big festivals in Los Angeles or New York, but it was close enough to drive. "Submission deadline is tomorrow," Marcus said. "I don't have anything ready." "Yes, you do," I shook my head. "No, I don't." Marcus stared at me. "What about the laundromat story?" I froze. The film he was talking about was unfinished. Raw footage I had been slowly editing before life collapsed around me. It told the story of a girl who worked in a laundromat and secretly filmed the lives of people around her. "My story? It's not ready," I said. Marcus smiled. "Neither are most good films." The next 24 hours became a blur. I barely slept. I edited footage until my eyes burned from staring at the screen. By sunrise, the film was finished. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I titled it Spin Cycle, and the next morning we drove 3 hours to submit it in person. 2 months later, I received an email. I almost didn't open it, because after so many rejections, hope becomes something dangerous. But when I finally clicked the message, the first line made my heart stop. "We are pleased to inform you that your film has been selected." Selected, not rejected, not ignored, selected. The festival screening took place in a small theater with barely 100 seats. But when the lights dimmed and the first scene appeared on the screen, the room went completely silent. For 12 minutes, strangers watched my story unfold. The laundromat, the spinning machines, the girl with a camera chasing a dream. When the film ended, something unexpected happened. People didn't immediately leave, they stayed, then someone started clapping. Slowly, then louder. By the time the lights came back on, the entire room was applauding. I sat frozen in my seat, because for the first time in my life, people were watching my story the way I had always imagined, not as a hobby, but as a film. After the screening, a man approached me in the lobby. He wore a simple black jacket and carried a notebook under his arm. "You made that film?" he asked. "Yes." He studied me for a moment. "My name is Daniel Carter," he said. "I'm a producer." I blinked. "A producer?" He nodded. "And I think you just made something very important." I stared at him, unsure whether to believe what I was hearing. "What do you mean?" Daniel smiled slightly. "I think you just made your first real movie." And for the first time in years, the dream I had nearly buried began breathing again. The strange thing about life is that sometimes the moment that changes everything doesn't feel dramatic. There are no flashing lights, no music, no perfect cinematic moment. Sometimes it begins with a quiet conversation in a theater lobby. The man who introduced himself as Daniel Carter didn't look like the Hollywood producers I had imagined growing up. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't carry the kind of confidence people associate with powerful industry figures. Instead, he looked thoughtful, observant, the kind of person who studied things carefully before speaking. "You made that film alone?" he asked. "Mostly," I said. "My friend Marcus helped me shoot some scenes." Daniel nodded slowly. "How long have you been making films?" "Since I was 14. "And you've never been to film school?" I shook my head. "No," he smiled slightly. "Good." That answer surprised me. "Good, yes," he said. "Film school teaches technique, but what you showed tonight, that came from somewhere else." I wasn't sure what to say. For years I had waited for someone to take my work seriously. Now that someone finally had, the moment felt almost unreal. Daniel continued. "You understand people," he said. "That's something you can't teach." The words stayed with me the entire drive home that night. Because for the first time, someone inside the film industry had looked at my work and seen potential instead of limitations. 2 weeks later, Daniel called. "I want to help you make a feature film." A feature film, not 10 minutes. Not a short, a real movie. At first I thought he was exaggerating, but Daniel explained that he worked with small independent productions that focused on authentic stories. "What kind of story do you want to tell?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "The truth." He laughed softly. "That's always the hardest story to sell." But he listened carefully as I described the idea forming in my mind. A young woman growing up above a laundromat. Her mother working endless hours. The struggle to believe that dreams can exist in places where survival feels more important. Daniel nodded. "That's the film you should make." Over the next year, my life changed in ways I never expected. For the first time, I wasn't filming scenes between work shifts. I had a small crew, professional cameras, actors who had spent years studying their craft, but despite all the new resources, the heart of the film remained exactly the same. The laundromat, the spinning machines, the girl who refused to give up. We titled the film Broken Lights. Because sometimes dreams grow strongest in the darkest places. The production wasn't glamorous. We ran out of money twice. A storm destroyed one of our outdoor sets. And more than once I wondered if I was capable of directing something this large. But every time doubt appeared, I remembered the girl filming scenes in the middle of the night beside washing machines. She hadn't quit. So neither could I. When the film finally premiered at a small festival in Austin, I sat in the back row of the theater beside my mother. She wore a simple dress she had bought years earlier for church. Her hands were folded nervously in her lap. "You did this," she whispered. "We did this," I said. When the lights dimmed, the audience fell silent. For 2 hours, strangers watched the story of a poor girl chasing an impossible dream. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they cried. And when the final scene faded into black, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then the applause began, slow at first, then louder still. People stood up. A full standing ovation. My mother squeezed my hand so tightly it almost hurt. But the most unbelievable moment came nearly a year later. By then the film had traveled across the country, winning several independent awards. One morning, my phone rang while I was helping my mother carry groceries upstairs. It was Daniel. "Elena," he said, trying to sound calm, Yes, you're nominated. For what? There was a pause. For an Academy Award? The words felt impossible. I leaned against the wall to steady myself. Because the poor girl who once filmed stories beside broken washing machines was now being invited to the biggest stage in filmmaking. The night of the ceremony felt surreal, bright lights, famous actors, directors I had admired for years. But when they announced the winner for Best Director, something inside me became completely still. And the Oscar goes to a pause. Then my name, for a moment I didn't move. My mother nudged my arm. Go, she whispered. Walking toward that stage felt like stepping into another life. But when I reached the microphone, I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I looked out at the audience and smiled. When I was 14, I began, I made my first movie in a laundromat using a broken phone. Some people laughed softly. But that's where I learned something important. I held the Oscar in my hands. Stories don't belong to people with money. The room was silent now. They belong to the people who refuse to stop telling them. Somewhere in Texas, a laundromat still hummed quietly beneath an old apartment. And the poor girl who once filmed stories there had finally directed the biggest story of her life, her own.